Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallon. Welcome to Paranormal Yakko. My guests in today's show are professional astrologers Carmen Turner-Schott and Bernie Ashman. I'll be talking with them about their book, Astrology's Zodiac Archetypes, Using Your Sixth Sense to Transform Past Life Patterns. Carmen Turner-Schott and Bernie Ashman, welcome to Paranormal Yakko.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
The esoteric world has many branches, astrology being one of them. That's the branch to which you both gravitated. Could you, Carmen and Bernie, tell me what was there about the field of astrology that drew you so deeply into it?
I first started studying astrology was when I was 16. I grew up in the Midwest. I was not raised to believe in these supernatural things, but I always was interested in things that were different. And I had these experiences I could not explain. The short version is I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw a glowing ball of light in my doorway when I was 16. No one could explain that to me. And even my mother saw it and she did not know what to say. After that, I grabbed every book I could about aliens, UFOs, astrology, and learned that I was a Virgo. Started learning to do charts by hand. This was 1993. And I just realized this validates my experience. And this is a powerful tool of self awareness. And man, I want to learn everything I can about astrology. And so I just started doing that. And I've been doing it ever since. So that's kind of the short version for me.
I went to college in Florida at the University of Florida, and I was real interested in psychology. Read different books about it, and I had a professor there who was one of the leaders in humanistic psychology, Sidney Gerard. Somehow he got me really thinking about symbols. And in 1973, I ran across a book by Dane Rudyard called The Astrology of Personality, and I was completely hooked. I think what I love about astrology, what drew me into it, it has a way of defining us, not trying to say we have to be a certain way, but the symbolism in it certainly gives different options for our personality, our careers, just the kind of people we like to be with. I think the thing that really brought me into it, as I got into it in 1974, 75, I've done thousands of charts for people over the years. I've been in it a long time. What I thought was fascinating was the way it cuts through a lot of things. I'm not trying to say traditional psychology that there's anything wrong with it, but sometimes when I worked with people, did charts for them, it seemed like I was hitting things quicker just because of the energies in a chart. To me, it's just a very valuable tool to help people. And then I went out there and was able to really help people by just translating these symbols. It's a powerful language, it's a beautiful language, and sometimes it's not so easy to understand it at first when people are trying to learn it. I was really grateful that I picked it up as fast as I did, but it still took some practice to work with people. I guess my passion just got brought out because it just seemed to express me in my writing as I went on to publish books like Carmen, talks I've done. It just seemed to bring everything together about how the universe works.
Each of you has written a number of successful astrology books. What was the motivating factor about the subject matter in astrology's zodiac archetypes that brought you together to collaborate on the book?
Bernie and I, we both love Carl Jung and astrology and psychology and transformation and healing. And we both are eighth house people, which is all about transformation and healing and rebirth, past lives and all those things. We call Bernie the past life whisperer. That's what Bernie's his book. He's able to tap into people's past life patterns and write about it and help each sign understand what they're learning and balancing and mastering in this life, things that are connected to past lives. Our love of Carl Jung and the archetypes of each sign, their strengths, their personality traits. We wanted to bring together that in a basic way and then mix in the past life patterns with each of the archetypes. Bernie had already written a lot of books about this topic, and we thought, let's just do a book together and merge it. And that's kind of what we did. I just kind of added my stuff to what he had done, and we kind of blended it, and we got our book.
What's exciting about writing with Carmen on this book, it's that we wanted to bring a book to the public where they wouldn't have to fight through the language of astrology. In other words, they could put it to instant use. Carl Jung wrote a lot about the collective unconscious, where these archetypes reside. They're very primitive instincts, but for us, we're modern astrologers. And for instance, like Aries, one of the archetypes for that would be the hero. And we just wanted to show how, from a past life sense, these patterns for an Aries, whatever they are, it's not like we're trapped in these patterns, but sometimes we want to move beyond them. We want to transform them. So we showed how to do that in the book. It's a really straightforward book instead of having to just be some kind of philosophy that you can't get your hands on. We bring a person right into the book very quickly. I think people will really enjoy it, but that's sort of my version of what the book is like.
Can you explain the importance of astrology's role in one's personal growth and development?
None of us are perfect, and that's a big deal. We all came here, whether you believe in past lives or not, we're all here to learn certain things about ourselves. I think the beauty of astrology is it shows different, you could say, challenges we came here to transform. It doesn't mean we came here to get stuck in them. We really wanted to come here to go beyond. Say, one of the patterns I see in somebody's chart says they have a real angry outburst because their adrenaline's really pumped. Maybe they are an Aries or another fire sign. Maybe they're trying to learn how to balance that so they can be assertive rather than having to always push for their way. Astrology really does show in different ways how to modify certain behaviors. Say I'm not assertive. Maybe I'm an Aries that's always letting other people take advantage of me too much. In a person's chart as an Aries, there's ways to get beyond that, to really be who you are. Aries is all about identity, who I am. That's just one example, one sign. Each sign has a particular talent to transform anything. Sometimes certain signs get a bad rap, like Virgo or Scorpio. I'm not just trying to pick on those signs. My wife's a Gemini, and sometimes she'll go, "Why do they always have to say a Gemini is shallow?" We're deep thinkers. The true astrology, the best, has an evolutionary tone to it. We want to evolve. We want to become who we are, basically. Maybe we don't have to change the world, but we want to be happy inside of our own body. We want to know who we are. So I think that's the beauty of the kind of work Carmen and I are doing together. In a way, we're simplifying astrology without making it sound like it's trite or silly. We still have that depth in what we're presenting to people, but we want to make it palatable so you can just take it in, enjoy it, and move on with your life. That's basically what I do for people when I do a personal session, to tell you the truth.
For those who may not be totally knowledgeable about birth charts, can you tell me exactly what is a birth chart?
Our birth chart is set for the month, day, and year you're born, the birth time, longitude, and latitude where you're born. It sets up this wheel where the planets sit in signs, and then there's these 12 astrological houses. The planets are like how we direct action. The signs describe how we might go about it. The houses are like Act One, Scene One, where our life takes place, with relationships, careers, how we communicate, how we want to earn a living, all this kind of stuff. I describe it as a blueprint about us. It shows what's going on within us, how we might want to externalize those themes in all different sorts of ways. What I found really fascinating about astrology is even if you have two people that have similar charts, there's so many different ways that they might act it out. You're not stuck with one particular way of doing it. But a birth chart is like a map of what we came here to do. It describes in many different ways how we might go about achieving peace of mind, how we might find our true passion in life, how we might find that soulmate we're looking for, all different sorts of things. Past life themes, they're spelled out in a birth chart if you know how to interpret them. That's just a little bit.
The way I describe it is at the moment, time, place of your birth, when you're looking up at the sky from Earth, we take a picture of the sky at that moment, time, place of birth, and it's an energy. In the sky, all the planets in a certain star constellation, which are one of the 12 zodiac signs, and all of the planets are in a certain area of the sky, which we break into 12 sections like a pie. We take a picture of the sky and we put it on a piece of paper. It's a wheel, and it's symbols. The planets have symbols, the signs have symbols, and they're all in one of the 12 houses, which rule the different areas of life where we express ourselves: career, home, family, marriage, partnership, how we make money, how we get a fulfillment and happiness. All these maps of the soul, I call them, can be slightly different because you take a picture of the sky on the moment, time, place of birth for twins. They're born maybe 30 minutes apart. The moon sign can change every 2 to 3 days. So that's why that moon sign, depending on the time and place of birth, could switch into a new sign for one of those twins. So they'll have very different emotional natures. Then sometimes they have identical charts. But then people often ask, well, how is that? They're the same chart. They're born the same time. They're twins. Well, we bring past life lessons in our soul has learning, and our soul is different than everybody else's soul. That's why the chart is very similar, but we bring our own past life patterns and lessons into this life. That's why everyone always asks me about twins because they're born really so close there. It can change. The rising sign changes signs every 2 hours. I mean, it really can make a difference when you're born. Knowing the time is important because that's how we'll get an accurate chart of where all the planets are and what house they're in. And that is where we can say, oh, this is where this energy expresses in the world. The natal chart or birth chart never changes. That's your mission. That's your personality. That's how you think, how you love, how you feel, your traits, your strengths, your weaknesses. It's who you are, and it doesn't change. There's many different types of charts, which, Bernie and I could talk about, that are different charts that we use to help see what's impacting you for the next few years or day to day. Those are transit charts. That's always fun to do. And then there's relationship charts where you can take your chart with your partner's chart and you put it on top of each other. We call it synastry charts. And then we analyze how you affect each other for good and bad, and who maybe likes who more, or who's driving somebody nuts. You can see all of these challenges and strengths of why you're attracted to certain people, why you may struggle with certain people in relationships based on how you show love, how you communicate. Your main trait can be very compatible and sometimes a little bit challenging with certain people. That's what we use it for, as a tool of personality to validate what you already know about yourself. So I know Bernie probably feels the same way. Every time I do a chart, I'm just validating what people know about themselves. I did a chart today and she said, "Wow, that's me." And like, "And how do you know this?" I'm like, "It's your chart. It's energy." Astrology to me is energy, and we have all 12 signs in our chart somewhere in that birth wheel that we can harness. We have all 12 archetypes in our book that we can harness. If we want to be more like an Aries hero warrior, we can look and see where's Aries on the wheel when we're born. What house is it on? We can tap into that energy. We can really learn from all 12 archetypes, 12 zodiac signs.
I said is perfect for what I'm going to be asking you now. If at all possible, to give a brief synopsis of the 12 sun signs and their archetypes.
Aries, the archetype for that is the hero, which makes a lot of sense in a way because it's a very spontaneous fire sign. The second one, Taurus, Carl Jung defined it as a regular person. Taurus is an earth sign. It's a stabilizing force, earth. And it's like when somebody says, well, what you see is what you're really getting from me. Taurus is a peaceful sign in a lot of ways. Now, something may alter that, when you get a whole chart done. Gemini, Jung had an archetype called the jester, and we felt that was a good one to match with Gemini because Gemini has so many different ways to communicate. They're a powerful perception communication sign. And they have a way of putting things into pictures, words. And sometimes they're very humorous the way they do it. So we went with a gesture on that. The fourth one was pretty obvious. The caregiver we assigned to the sign Cancer because the nurturing force of the universe in all of us, if we have that, is going to come through the sign Cancer. The planet connected to Cancer is the moon. The caregiver, wanting to be protective of our friends. It's like that protective element in us that wants to care for our pets, our plants, our people. The fifth one, the artist, we assigned to Leo because of the Leo and number five, the fifth sign, has to do with self expression and creativity. If you're going to make a dream come first, come alive, you have to really believe in it. Leo is willpower, willing something to happen. And also, the artist is really just creativity that comes out of Leo. So we went with that. Sage, the sixth one, we put it with Virgo because there is something about Virgo that knows how to sum things up for people. It's funny, my father was a Virgo, and I was this fiery kid, idealistic Sagittarian I am, and I have a lot of Pisces in my chart. But there was something philosophical about him. He was a Virgo. I didn't see it right away until I got a little bit older that I could appreciate it. He had kind of a calming influence. You don't have to do it all at once. Each day is important. If you make a mistake one day, you can make up for it the next. Or if you mess up a week, you can come up later. There's just something practical and pragmatic about the sign Virgo. So we put Sage with Virgo.
The seventh sign is Libra. Libra's always known to be associated with partnership and love, relationship. They're the lover archetype. They rule the seventh house. So it's all about compromise and justice and equality and fairness. But they also love to beauty and love and creativity. They're the lover. And then Scorpio is always known to be a mysterious sign, deep and transformative and secretive and private and healing. So they're the magician associated with death and rebirth, bringing things to life and magic. Scorpios are a powerful water sign that is transformative type of a sign. A lot of them are interested in psychology, helping people with their problems and astrology and all these things. Then we have the explorer archetype, which is definitely Sagittarius, the traveler, the wanderer, the seeker, the explorer, going to far away foreign countries and lands and learning different languages and different religions, all of those exploration things of Sag. They're the optimist. Sages are fire. They like to be active and to roam. Then we have Capricorn, which is always known to be responsible and kind of, as an earth sign, very strict and very into order and rules. So they're the ruler of the archetype. They like to make the rules. They like to have certain practical, realistic goals to achieve. They're the boss, the leader, the politician, the ruler. Those are kind of the archetype names for Capricorn. They rule career, the public eye, recognition, achievement in astrology, the 10th house. That really fits. And then with Aquarius, they're known to be the outlaw, the rebel, the revolutionary, the misfit, because they're innovative. They're an air sign, but they're ruled by Uranus. So they're all about being different, thinking different, being non traditional. What's an outlaw? Well, they go against what's status quo. They rebel, kind of question authority. Why do we have to do it that way? Very much free spirited, likes their freedom and independence, doesn't want to be tied down and wants to be their unique self. That's Aquarius. And then Pisces ends the zodiac, the 12th sign, and they are really deeply spiritual, idealistic, imaginative, but are very trusting, in my opinion. And so we call them the innocent, the dreamer. Pisces are associated with the 12th house, dreams and sleep and imagination and art, creativity, but also spirituality. Having a spiritual belief system is a Pisces thing, having faith in something higher and bigger than themselves. The collective unconscious, meditation, astrology, all these things are very, very interesting for a Pisces. They also are compassionate. They feel people's pain. They're very kind. That's where they get the innocent archetype. They're very trusting. They can get hurt because of that. So they need to learn to have boundaries. to see people with normal glasses, not rose-colored glasses on. Those are the last 6 there, and their archetype energies.
How does astrology show our past lifetimes?
When you get a chart done, the last book the two of us published came out through the same publisher, O Books in London, called Astrology's Magical Nodes of the Moon. The nodes of the moon, they're opposite each other in a chart. There's one looks like a pair of headphones, like you have on, right side up headphones. That's the north node of the moon. The south node isn't like an upside down pair of headphones. They're two symbols. They play off of each other in a person's chart. The north node is said to represent what we've come here to do, like a new theme of some sort. The south node is said to represent past life power of some sort. What we hope is it doesn't have so much power over us that we can't break out of it. So it's a transformative energy if we tune into it. That's the main thing. For instance, I'm a north node in Taurus person. That's where I get my Taurus energy, through the north node. That's what I said about earlier. It's just stabilizing energy. I have the south node in Scorpio, which can be pretty intense. When I'm writing, I'm very intense. Something happens to me. I really get into it. Scorpio has to do with depth, going into the deepest part of life. It's a very psychological energy. What you don't want to do in Scorpio is create a crisis just to create one. I tell people that if they have nodes like mine, you want to balance it, because sometimes we want to disrupt just to disrupt through Scorpio. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But if you're doing it too much, you kind of drain other people and you drain yourself. So the main thing is, with these opposites, they're really important. That's usually the first thing I look at, the nodes of the moon. If you get a whole chart done, we were talking about the 12 houses. The 12th house of a chart, I'll keep it simple. It's like the mothership of past lives. It's where they emanate from in the chart. It's like a heartbeat in the chart. Whether you have any planets in there or not, there's different ways to interpret it. We all have a 12th house. This is that part that we were talking about. That's based on the birth time, month, day, and year, longitude, and latitude. You get the wheel done. That's going to give you some. There's certain planets like Saturn. Sometimes Saturn gets a bad rap. It used to be called the karmic taskmaster. There's a way to really interpret Saturn, though, to find out if you're going to be grounded, that planet is like an anchor to get something done. It's time management, is what Saturn is. It's defining ourselves. But sometimes, I'm probably dating myself here, but I used to have vinyl records and they'd have a scratch in them. And every time that turntable would go around, it hit that scratch. That's how Saturn can be inside of us. It's trying to tell us something. Maybe we're doing something wrong that we came here to get right. Saturn can be too controlling. Maybe it's saying, let up a little bit. You don't have to control people. You don't have to be a workaholic. You can let up a little bit, make time for some pleasure. This is Saturn kind of themes. One other thing is Pluto. Pluto is rebirth in a lot of ways and transformation. Sometimes it gets a bad rap too. Growth comes a lot of times through Pluto in a chart. It's like we find the deepest part of ourselves. It's our passion, really, for life. It's a wonderful thing. It can just be our passionate way of expressing ourselves. But the nodes of the moon are the great way to start with. That's why we wrote a whole book on it. We wanted to show the past life patterns associated with those opposites and how to transform just through that. You can tell there's an awful lot in a chart. It's like a vast ecosystem. Sometimes people show pictures of the brain, and we know very little about the brain, is what most neurologists say. Sometimes you have to find the right wiring in a brain if you're going to help somebody when you're operating on them. Well, what a chart does, that blueprint, it shows where a lot of our wiring is, what we can tap into, how we can transform through it. We've used the word transform a lot in this interview, but a lot of times that's what it takes. We live in 2025. This has been an evolutionary year for my clients. I can't tell you how many people I've seen that wanted to make that next step to change something. Doesn't mean they aren't good people. They just want to tweak something. And sometimes that's what this is all about, just making a mild shift. Marianne Williamson, I bought one of her books, and I wanted to know what she meant by a miracle. And she had a very simple definition. She called it an altered perception. And very much of the time is what a chart shows how to get that altered perception, how to just change it a little bit, to maybe see a little bit clearer when you're trying to look for a clearer perception of your life.
Each pair is here to help us balance and learn a special lessons. Aries and Libra nodes of the moon for past lives and our soul mission. I call these the nodes of relationship karma. Those are just basic things here. Taurus Scorpio nodes, I find these are the nodes of transformation, healing, forgiveness, letting go. A lot of change. When you have those nodes, you have to learn to let go and forgive and heal. And Gemini Sagittarius nodes are the nodes of knowledge. They love to learn and communicate and explore in different ways. And then Cancer Capricorn nodes, I call these the nodes of family karma. Learning to balance home and family with your work and career, learning karma with your parents, your grandparents, your kids, your husband, your spouse, responsibilities with families, family karma. Leo and Aquarius, I find, these are the nodes of self-expression, creativity, being unique, finding your way in the world and doing something that is self-expression in some way, having fun, pleasure, creativity, innovation. And then the Virgo Pisces nodes are the nodes, I call these the nodes of service, practical service and spiritual service, learning to balance those, being idealistic with being realistic and practical, and learning to be of service in those ways and balancing those. So those are the 12, and each sign has a pair or a polar opposite. Like Bernie was saying, the North Node is where we don't really feel comfortable when we're first starting out. And we're here to start moving towards that energy and embracing it and balancing it out with our South Node, which is our past lifetime patterns and energies, things we've already mastered. We feel cozy and comfortable in the South Node of the moon because that's where our soul's already mastered and been, and strengths. Also, healing, though, things we need to heal. And as we get into the North Node, we're here just to find a balance between both and be comfortable doing both. That's the past lives. That's really a lot about past lives in our chart, has to do with those nodes and those signs, strengths and weaknesses and learning. And then what house the nodes are in is the area of life we're learning to master and learning to move towards. If your north node's in the seventh house of marriage and partnership, and your south node's in the first house, that means you're learning to let go of being self reliant and independent and allow yourself to have commitment and relationship. Allow yourself to compromise and rely on others and get comfortable with that. And you don't have to do everything on your own. You're kind of balancing that. As you look at each house pair, you can see the learning that you have from past lives in this life.
Now, when it comes to past lives, I'm curious to know, do we all indeed have past lives, or there's certain souls who arrive here and this is their first time around?
When I first got into astrology, I don't know why this happened because it was early on. I started looking at charts and I really got the feeling quickly. I wasn't looking at one lifetime. I was looking at several lifetimes a person had. Now, here's what I tell a person when I'm working one to one with them. Usually there's certain themes they really came in here to get clear about. There's a connection to maybe 6 lifetimes that they did this pattern and they're trying to get past it. It doesn't mean they might have had hundreds of lives, but it might only be 6 or 7 that they did this pattern. And a group, it's like a set of them. Here's the key: if you transform it in this life, it corrects the whole thing. It's not like it only corrects one of those lifetimes connected to this life. I haven't met anybody yet that's here for the first time. I'm not trying to say that it's impossible. You actually asked a question I've never heard anybody ask. Good for you. It's a good question, though. I've never run into that. Maybe I attract people who have had several lives. It's possible. I know I've knocked around quite a bit, past life wise. I've always run into people like this. They've had many different lives. The interesting thing is, though, at times I'll tell a person it doesn't mean you were like this in every lifetime, but there were six in particular where you really struggled with this theme. It could be three, it might be eight. It just seems to hit me. I'm very intuitive. It just seems to hit me about how many times somebody has gone through the same thing. And you can tell somebody's just tired of it. They're exhausted from it. Say somebody keeps getting the same type of into the same type of relationship and they're trying to break a pattern. Maybe they get addicted to a person who's not good for them and they give up on that. But then they find themselves with the same type of person all over again. They're trying to break the pattern. And sometimes it is a past life pattern. When I look closely at a chart, I can tell it's something that they really have wanted to conquer in this particular lifetime. It doesn't matter how many times a person has done the pattern, if you can nip it in the bud this time, it sets you free. And that's the beauty of it all. And I think that's the healing energy of even in any kind of counseling situation, whatever a person picks to help them. In astrology, it's the same thing. People just feel so relieved when they get out of a particular pattern. Say somebody's got a gambling problem. They take one risk after another and it's caused problems with their family because they can't stop gambling. Maybe they've had that pattern before, past life wise. They go to the cliff, they always want to be near the cliff, and they should back up a little bit. They don't need to keep being so near the cliff they fall over. Sometimes they really just need to sense how to break out of that. That's what's really, really pretty cool about astrology, I've always felt. The answer is in a chart. It doesn't mean somebody's going to transform it just overnight. It might take a lot of practice to get good at it. Just like if you're going to be good in any sport, usually you have to really work at it, or any profession, whatever it is. But you asked a good question. I would just say in my own work, I see people a lot really with multiple lives. It's not a question of good astrological signs or bad astrological signs. The universe works through all of them. There's power in each astrological sign to transform. If you get a chart done, you're going to find there's three main components in it: the sun, the moon, and what's called the rising sign, the ascendant. That's the sign on the first house. On the eastern horizon, when you're born, there's a sign that's symbolized on the first house of a chart. That's your persona, your identity sign, your personal style. The moon says a lot about our instincts, our intuition, our emotional needs, this kind of thing. The sun is like our ego strength, our willpower. So your first, middle, and last names of your astrological identity, it's really good to know those three even, because they really help you tune in to who you are. They're not the whole package, but they're a beginning. And I usually go over that with somebody if they get their chart done for the first time in particular.
Do you believe people can remember their past lives? And if they can, how would you recommend they go about recalling it?
Some people actually go and have a past life regression done. I had that done once. It was quite an experience. It was many years ago. What I find very interesting about astrology is it's a way to identify those patterns. We talk a lot about patterns in our books, even when we do a public lecture about it. When you know what they are, at least it gives you the material to know how to change something when you find out. It's just like having the knowledge, the information. What do you want to do with it? I'll go over a past life pattern with somebody, and you can tell they've already conquered it. They're clear. They don't even want to go near that thing again. What troubled them, being stuck in it. But I'll bring another one up, and they'll go, "That's the other one that I'm really dealing with. That I want to find out how to deal with it." And they said, they're talking to me. They said, "You've expressed it in a way that makes more sense than the way I'm going over it in my head. That it's actually possible to figure a way through this." Sometimes it's just that we don't we don't want to beat ourselves up over this. It doesn't mean we're bad people because we have a past life pattern of some sort or something we're trying to work through. But sometimes it really helps to know what we're dealing with. That's the main thing, to bring it to the surface. A lot of my clients want to know that. They're interested in past life patterns, past life themes. It's not all they want to know, but they have other questions for sure about other things. But our books have focused on that, so that's why we're talking so much about it today.
Does everyone have a sixth sense, and are certain signs more intuitive than other signs?
I believe everybody has a sixth sense, but everybody doesn't do it the same way. Well, it doesn't come through the same way. And there are some signs, specifically water signs like Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, that they may have a certain sixth sense that is more tied to emotion. Other signs, like air signs, their sixth sense can come through insight or thoughts or images in their mind. Yes, I believe we all have a gut instinct. I guess I call it kind of a soul survival instinct, I believe, as human beings, but then some of us have a heightened psychic sensitivity. I do believe that. Then certain placements, like in the 12th house, 8th house, and the water houses, the sun, moon, there, different placements in your chart can also bless you with what I call sixth sense gifts, intuition, but everybody has it. Everybody has it. They may not believe they have it, but it's like even people that are skeptics that don't really believe in all these things. I always say the quickest way to get a skeptic not to be one is to do their birth chart, because then they're like, "How did you know? How did you know that? How do you?" And it's just validating what they know about themselves. That's why it's so powerful. I'll tell people, oh, hey, you actually are very intuitive and you really need to trust your gut instinct. And they're like, yeah, I always doubt myself, but then I'm always know I'm right when I feel something. I try to help different people tap into that, because not a lot of us are raised, I know I wasn't, to listen to my intuition. And I always have these sixth sense feelings or these awareness of things, or a feeling something was going to happen and nobody could explain it to me. And they say, oh, it's your imagination. But really, no, it's actually like it saves us. It's our inner voice. I feel like it's our spirit talking to us. Sometimes it could be our spirit guides or angels talking to us to give us insight. Yes, I believe we all have sixth sense. I believe some signs have a little bit more than others. And then I also believe you can learn to develop. You can take classes and learn to develop your sixth sense, your psychic abilities too, through meditation and yoga and breathing exercises and art and creativity. There's lots of ways to tap into your psychic abilities, I guess you could say.
How can studying astrology help my viewers? And what are some key insights you would like the audience to know about astrology that they might not know?
Astrology is even in the Bible. It's mentioned in the Bible several times. The fixed signs of the zodiac are in the book of Revelation. There's astrology since ancient times. A lot of people think astronomy existed before astrology, but it didn't. Astrology was around before astronomy, really. I always say that.
A lot of people are really surprised when they get a chart done for the first time. They had no idea what it could do. Some people thought it could do it, but they were still surprised, to find out more about themselves, more about maybe what their career possibilities could be. I would just say that it's like a really old psychology. One guy I know, an astrologer, called it the oldest form of psychotherapy. He was probably right. It just goes back centuries. In other civilizations used it. They say Western astrology that Carmen and I practice started around 300 BC. One that they use in India started about 1500 BC. What we've done, though, is just kind of bring it into modern times so it can be translated in a way for people to make use of it. It's a practical language. I'm pretty pragmatic. I like to put something to use if I'm going to learn it. It can be pragmatic, it's very psychological. It can show how to bring out your intuition, even. It's hard to label it really because there's a lot of different ways it can be used. My wife said one time, if I keep writing, this was years ago, people are going to copy your style. Do you really want that to happen? I said, no, they won't. Because if you're going to become an astrologer, you have to find your own style. Otherwise, people are going to think it's not real. You may learn through a few books that Carmen and I have written, but sooner or later, you have to really do the work. Astrology, in a way, shows people really a lot about their own identity if they want to know that. We all came here to learn something, in my opinion, into a lifetime. On the soul level, I've told people that we'll get a vision of what we might be coming in to do. And we might have taken a deep breath on that soul level. Maybe this was going to be a lifetime where we were going to have to do a lot of transforming, but maybe not. You know, there's so much said about karma. Sometimes it's oversaid because when you come right down to it, everybody wants to find a sense of happiness, a sense of belonging, a sense of inner peace, something to do in the world that makes you feel good. A chart covers all that. It really does. I'm not making that up. It's all in there. It helped me walk a better path. And I've helped, I know Carmen has too. We've just helped a lot of people find just a more meaningful path at times. It doesn't mean they're not smart, they're not creative, but there's always, sometimes there's just a missing piece that when you get a chart done, when you talk about insight, there's an insight in a chart just sitting there to be tapped into. It's a beautiful language.
What, Carmen and Bernie, do you hope readers of astrology's zodiac archetypes learn from it?
Probably, from my 2 cents I put in, is you can get a deeper understanding of astrology in a very clear language, in a really down to earth, the way we presented it, the way the book is structured. You can get a deeper sense of why you came into this life in the first place, a deeper understanding of symbols, the way symbols talk to us, the way the signs talk to us, the way we presented the book, just like a birth chart is a map. The book itself is a map for clearer self-understanding. I would say basically, if I was going to put it in a nutshell, is probably the way I would express it.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to buy astrology's zodiac archetypes using your sixth sense to transform past life patterns, how can they do that?
Find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Collective Ink UK, any books are sold, Books a Million, on our website, carmenturnerschott.com and bernieashman.com.
Using your sixth sense, we make it clear how to use that through these energies.
Carmen, Turner-Schott, and Bernie Ashman, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. Yapping with the two of you has been a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallon of Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.